And a good Monday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand by checking out the Nick Craig Show in your favorite podcast app. You can also listen online by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our show this morning is brought to you in part by The Law Group. Melissa Gott and her amazing team. Visit them online, lawgroupnc.com, or give them a call, 910-251-6088. Well, hopefully you had a nice Thanksgiving, couple of days off, a break, and kind of getting away from everything leading into the Thanksgiving holiday. And now here we are, December the 1st. But of course, as much as you may have wanted to break away from the news cycle, break away from everything ongoing for Thanksgiving, it was hard to do, as Wednesday afternoon we started following a horrific situation in Washington, D.C., as two National Guard members from part of the West Virginia National Guard who were on deployment in Washington, D.C., as the president back a couple of months ago decided that he was going to, crack down on crime in our nation's capital. Make sure that the nation's capital that has visitors, school trips, and people visiting from literally all over the globe to check out our nation's capital, to check out Washington, D.C., don't have to deal with lawless crime. So he deployed the National Guard in part to clean up the crime because, surprise, surprise, ladies and gentlemen, I know you're going to find this as shocking as I did. Democrats that run Washington, D.C., the Democrat mayor, Muriel Bowser, the Democrat D.C. City Council, they don't care about law and order. They don't care about holding individuals accountable for the things that they do. So like every other blue city and blue state across the country, it has descended into complete and total chaos. It is a tale, unfortunately, as old as time. When you allow criminals, when you allow dangerous repeat offenders out on the streets, when you don't hold them accountable, when you allow them to commit crimes and immediately get released back into the public, wow, lo and behold, they commit crime once again. The President of the United States, who has jurisdiction over the D.C. Metro Police, has some level of jurisdiction over the District of Columbia, said to hell with this. We are not going to allow our nation's capital. When you look at the United States of America, you look at our government, we are not going to allow that city to descend into complete and total chaos like it has been. So back a couple of months ago, over the summer, he deployed the National Guard. Of course, Democrats' heads explode. Oh my God, it's an insurrection. The National Guard, the military is roaming the streets of D.C. It's the end of the freaking world. And what was the result? There was a period of time, it was either 11 or 14 days. I don't remember exactly what the number was. But it was either 11 or 14 days that there was not a murder in the District of Columbia, which, by the way, is almost unprecedented because there is so much crime in D.C. There is so much lawlessness in D.C. You had an 11, 14, something like that period of time with no murders, no homicides in the district. Remarkable. You can absolutely attribute that to the National Guard. Not that the National Guard was roaming around arresting people, but it was the show of force. It was a deterrent to individuals that if you are going to commit crimes, if you are going to act in a manner in which you are defacing Washington, D.C., you are harming individuals, whether they are living in D.C., whether they are members of Congress who are getting, carjacked with a gun. I mean, just all of the fun things that were going on in D.C. The National Guard deployment showed that, frankly, that shit's not going to stand. We're not going to do that anymore. And it's been incredibly effective, very effective. You've seen crime plummet in D.C. since that period of time, and they continue. So on Wednesday afternoon, early afternoon, a day before Thanksgiving, two National Guard members who were on patrol just 2 or 3 blocks from the White House were targeted by an Afghani national who Joe Biden led into the country. One of them fatally wounded. The other, I can only imagine what the recovery is going to look like. So Wednesday afternoon, You had this rapid law enforcement military response across this area in D.C. as these two National Guard members who had just turned the corner on a street in D.C. were violently and brutally attacked and assaulted with a firearm by an individual who was in the country thanks to Joseph Robinette Biden and the Democrat Party. Now, fortunately, that gunman was taken into custody. Other members of the National Guard, it's not clear what state they were with. The two who were shot at, one unfortunately killed. We'll get into the details of her. 20 years old. I mean, just a disgusting situation. Other National Guard members got swept into action, returned fire, stopped the Afghani national assassin, and were able to subdue him until law enforcement was able to arrive and arrest him. He's in custody this morning. So here's the detail. The patrol, which was two, which makes sense. You don't want in these individuals roaming the streets alone. Gives an opportunity for somebody to attack a single Guard member and them not have any defense. The patrol, the two West Virginia National Guard members, were rounding a corner near Farragut Square when the attacker opened fire, striking both soldiers in the initial exchange. The Guard members, a woman and man, assigned to a highly visible deployment ordered by President Donald Trump, had little time to react before their colleagues intervened. The suspect, who has now been identified as a 29-year-old Afghani national by the name of Romalaka Lakawa, I think is how I have no idea how to pronounce this guy's name, and honestly, I don't freaking care, had been living in Washington state near the Canadian border, according to a person familiar with the investigation. The person said that the gunman waited for the patrol to come into view and began shooting, hitting the woman first before taking her service weapon and firing at the other guardsman. The male soldier was struck in the neck before another member of the unit shot the attacker. So, I mean, this was a planned, coordinated attack. You literally had this guy, an Afghani national, who shouldn't have been in the United States, waiting around a corner, waiting for these two members of the West Virginia National Guard to turn the corner, minding their own business, conducting the orders that they were assigned to, waited for them to turn the corner so that he could assassinate and kill both of them. And it's why the title of today's show is America Has an Immigration Problem. It does. And this brutal attack that took place on Wednesday, a day before Thanksgiving, is going to spark I don't exactly know the word to describe it yet, but it is, and it's already starting. We'll get into some of the commentary from President Trump coming up as we go through the show this morning. But it is sparking and is going to continue to spark a national backlash on the U.S. immigration system. And that's unfortunately going to hurt individuals who have worked hard, individuals who are trying to go through the process of coming to the United States legally, going through the legal channels. It's going to, unfortunately, catch some of them up in this, but I don't know that we have another choice. Under no circumstances, the day before Thanksgiving, should we be talking about two National Guard members in an attempted assassination. One, we would find out later, a successful assassination of a National Guard member a day before Thanksgiving by an individual who is not a U.S.-born citizen, but was led into the United States by the Biden administration because he, Joe Biden, the former commander-in-chief, botched the Afghanistan withdrawal so bad. He botched it so bad that the solution was we're going to let tens of thousands of Afghani nationals into the United States of America. The withdrawal from Afghanistan was an unmitigated freaking disaster. And now here we are years later dealing with additional consequences of that disastrous withdrawal. Plain and simple. There's nobody else to point the finger at. I know the media, and of course, they tried their damnedest to say, oh, well, if Donald Trump hadn't deployed the National Guard to D.C., this 20-year-old would still be alive. If evil, awful, terrible Donald Trump hadn't tried to clean up crime in Washington, D.C., we wouldn't have this problem. But of course, that is, to say that's pathetically predictable is almost an understatement. Don't believe me. Don't take my word for it. Here's the coverage as it unfolded on MSNBC, or now MS Now. They're great rebranding. This is as the situation was unfolding Wednesday afternoon. Don't take my word for it, folks. I'm a liar. Don't take my word for it. Let's listen to the words directly out of the progressive left. We still had no idea what was happening. We didn't know if individuals were alive or dead. We didn't know if there was a suspect in custody. This is as the situation is unfolding. Take a listen with your own ears.
But of course, there's so much controversy happening in the United States right now with ICE, who are also wearing uniforms and wearing masks. And so you don't know people walking around with uniforms in an American city. There are some Americans that might object to that. And so apparently this shooting has happened.
So there you go. This shooting has happened because there are people walking around the United States with either members of the National Guard, members of Customs and Border Protection. They are wearing their uniforms. And so because they are wearing their uniforms, presumably, I'm just now inferring based on the commentary there from MS Now and Katie Tur reports, they deserve to be shot at. They deserve to be shot at and killed. Is that a fair assessment based on the clip in the comments you just heard? These individuals are walking around with military garb. Oh. So because they're walking around in uniform as members of the West Virginia National Guard, they deserve to be shot and killed? Where's the logic here? How does 1 + 1 = 2 in that equation? Because members of Customs and Border Protection were in the city of Charlotte over the last couple of weeks wearing their uniforms because, they're members of Customs and Border Protection the same way that everybody else, depending on where you work, has a uniform. If you work in retail, you have a uniform. If you work in fast food, you have a uniform. Many businesses have some level of dress code and attire. Because you're wearing a National Guard uniform, because you're a member of the National Guard on patrol in D.C., you deserve to be shot and killed? What the hell are we doing? But folks, of course, this has to be the immediate reaction from the left. Of course this has to be the reaction. It's all they've got. They can't possibly point the finger at the guy, the 29-year-old Afghani national who pulled the trigger. It's got to be somebody else's fault. It can't possibly be the immigrant's fault. It can't possibly be the guy that actually pulled the trigger. No, it's got to be Donald Trump's fault. It's got to be, the National Guard members' fault. This is from the same political party, the Democrats, that are all about, oh my God, victim blaming. You can't victim blame. Don't victim blame. Yet they are essentially blaming the National Guard members for doing the job in which they were deployed to. Blaming them for wearing their uniform as a sworn member of the National Guard. It's almost unconscionable. But then again, we're talking about MSNBC. We're talking about the left. We're talking about Democrats who use logic to take logic to absolutely no situation at all, this one included. So we've learned this 29-year-old arrived in the United States, the Afghani national, arrived in the United States through Operation Allies Welcome. Wow. Allies Welcome, all right, as he killed a 20-year-old National Guard member from West Virginia on Wednesday. Operation Allies Welcome, abso-freaking-lutely. which was an immediate and direct response to the botched 2021 Afghanistan withdrawal, which allowed roughly 90,000 Afghans to obtain special immigrant visas under the Biden administration. Now, there were some conflicting reports early on that this 29-year-old was in the country illegally after overstaying his visa. However, it was confirmed that that was not the case. He applied for asylum back in December of 2024 and was granted that. So, was not in the United States illegally as initial reports came out. However, did come in through that program that started in 2021. And resettled somewhere in Washington state. He reportedly entered the U.S. on September the 8th, 2021 through the refugee program, which provided foreign national immigrant processing and resettlement support following the chaotic withdrawal, which you can point the finger at nobody else but the previous president of the United States in Joe Biden. Evacuees, including Afghani allies, their families, and other vulnerable groups were either placed with relatives or temporary shelters in military safe havens until they were resettled throughout the United States. So you had this individual, again, came into the country under this program. Again, I'm not saying illegally came into the country, but came into the country under this visa program, which had to be created because Joe Biden and the Democrats botched the Afghanistan withdrawal so poorly that the only solution was to allow 90,000 plus, and I've read other numbers higher, into the hundreds of thousands, into the United States as some sort of solace, as some sort of second place prize for what the United States did in their botched withdrawal. Giving up Bagram Air Force. But I mean, just a complete freaking disaster. I covered it well. I was back on the radio here in Wilmington when that happened. Unmitigated disaster doesn't even begin to describe the level of what the 2021 withdrawal looked like. I mean, it was just a disaster from start to finish. No logic whatsoever. So President Donald Trump, Wednesday night, again, remember last week, covered that story from the New York Times about how Donald Trump is not seen anymore and how he is hiding away and he's not available. So Wednesday night, which the president was not scheduled to speak, I get a copy of his press schedule every day. He was not scheduled to speak. He did give some remarks Wednesday night leading into Thanksgiving, a little bit of a Thanksgiving message, so this will be a little bit dated, but immediately started with the coverage of this horrific attack that was unfolding in D.C. At the time, Wednesday night, both of the National Guard members were still in critical condition, still fighting for their lives. So this is kind of we're walking through this chronologically to how we got there. Here was the president's immediate reaction. At this point, this happened around 9 o'clock Wednesday night. So the situation had happened 7-8 hours earlier. So still relatively fluid situation. Those National Guard members still clinging to their lives at the time. Here's the president.
My great fellow Americans, earlier today on the eve of the Thanksgiving holiday, 2 members of the National Guard serving in Washington, D.C. were shot at point-blank range in a monstrous ambush-style attack just steps away from the White House. They had been deputized as part of the most successful public safety and national security mission in the history of our nation's capital, the D.C. Safe and Beautiful Task Force, which has achieved an unprecedented reduction in violent crime and crimes of all type. This heinous assault was an act of evil, an act of hatred, and an act of terror. It was a crime against our entire nation. It was a crime against humanity. The hearts of all Americans tonight are with those 2 members of the West Virginia National Guard and their families. The love of our entire country is pouring out for them, and we are lifting them up in our prayers. As we are filled with anguish and grief for those who were shot, we're also filled with righteous anger and ferocious resolve. As President of the United States, I am determined to ensure that the animal who perpetrated this atrocity pays the steepest possible price. I can report tonight that based on the best available information, The Department of Homeland Security is confident that the suspect in custody is a foreigner who entered our country from Afghanistan, a hellhole on earth. He was flown in by the Biden administration in September 2021 on those infamous flights that everybody was talking about. Nobody knew who was coming in. Nobody knew anything about it. His status was extended under legislation signed by President Biden, a disastrous president, the worst in the history of our country.
Now, I'm going to pause the president real quick here because this is an important part of the story and why, again, the title of the show, America Has an Immigration Problem. The Afghanistan withdrawal was such a disaster, such an unmitigated disaster, that the solution was, as I mentioned, just allowing these 90 to over 100,000 individuals into the United States with little or zero screening of their history. Now, I will note that the 29-year-old Afghani national who shot and killed one National Guard member, critically wounded the other in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, had no criminal record in the United States. Fair. But what do we know about this individual's background? Was he thoroughly vetted and screened by the U.S. government? Was he thoroughly vetted and looked at by the State Department, by Homeland Security, by whoever was responsible? And the answer to that question is an emphatic no. Because things were such a disaster in the immediate aftermath of the withdrawal, we just said, yeah, sign on the dotted line. You can come into the United States. We'll fly over to the U.S. We'll put you up somewhere. We'll help you with resettlement. We'll give you taxpayer dollars to get settled. There was no screening. And it's why there's been discussion over the last couple of years about Middle East terror cells currently being set up in the United States. It's not that these individuals came in illegally through the U.S.-Mexico border. It's that they were flown into the U.S. by Joe Biden with no screening. There's no way the United States screened these 90-plus thousand individuals and put them through a thorough vetting process in the period of just weeks. It just didn't happen. We just hoped and prayed that nothing bad would happen. We just hoped that the individuals, many of which were radicalized overseas, would not come to the United States and commit mass atrocities. We just had to hope and pray that wouldn't be the case. Just fingers crossed, guys. Let's cross our fingers and hope that none of the individuals we let in from some third world hellhole country aren't going to commit atrocities in the U.S. What a great plan that was. That is an important part of this story that I don't hear anybody talking about at all. I don't have an issue with people coming into the United States. I don't have an issue with individuals immigrating to the U.S. I have a problem with illegal immigration, and I have a problem with half-assed immigration processes like this Operation Allies thing that the Biden administration created. I have a problem with that. Unequivocally, without a doubt, I have a huge problem with that. But of course, you turn on CNN or MSNBC or pick up a copy of the New York Times this morning, you're not going to hear anything about that. They're not going to talk about that process. They're not going to talk about the lax vetting that took place there at all. Why? Because it doesn't fit their narrative. More from President Trump.
This attack underscores the single greatest national security threat facing our nation. The last administration let in 20 million unknown and unvetted foreigners from all over the world, from places that you don't want to even know about. No country can tolerate such a risk to our very survival. An example is Minnesota, where hundreds of thousands of Somalians are ripping off our country and ripping apart that once great state. Billions of dollars are lost, and gangs of Somalians come from a country that doesn't even have a government, no laws, no water, no military, no nothing. As their representatives in our country preach to us about our Constitution and how our country is no good. We're not going to put up with these kind of assaults on law and order by people who shouldn't even be in our country. We must now re-examine every single alien who has entered our country from Afghanistan under Biden, and we must take all necessary measures to ensure the removal of any alien from any country who does not belong here or add benefit to our country. If they can't love our country, we don't want them. America will never bend and never yield in the face of terror. And at the same time, we will not be deterred from the mission these service members were so nobly fulfilling. That is why tonight I can announce that I have directed the Department of War to mobilize an additional 500 troops to help protect our capital city. We will make America totally safe again, and we will bring the perpetrator of this barbaric attack to swift and certain justice if the bullets going in the opposite direction haven't already done that. During this time of the year, when we gather at home with loved ones, these two patriots were wearing the uniform of our country, patrolling the streets of our capital. They had taken a selfless oath to defend our nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that is exactly what they were doing when they were gunned down in a savage attack. I want to express my extraordinary gratitude to every member of the United States military who is deployed tonight, at home and abroad. I also want to thank the Secret Service and the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department for their work today. This Thanksgiving, I ask every family to say a prayer for the two great heroes who were so horribly shot, and for their loved ones. Please say a prayer. May God bless them and comfort them, and may God bless and protect the United States of America. Thank you and good night.
So that was President Trump, again, in the almost immediate aftermath of this. Wednesday night, no press event scheduled. There was nothing on the calendar that was supposed to take place. However, as we have continued to see, contrary to some of the ridiculous reporting on the left that Donald Trump's battery is running out. I covered a story when I was on Wednesday morning on WBT Radio, read through this ridiculous piece from the New York Times about how Trump is slowing down, about how he's not seen as much anymore. He's aging very rapidly in office. His health is failing. Yet here he is, Thanksgiving Eve, 9 p.m., maybe a little after 9 p.m., addressing the nation after what can only be described as a horrific situation that led, at the time we didn't know, but we knew that two National Guard members had been shot, ambushed by an Afghani national in Washington, D.C., and were still fighting for their lives. And the whole situation was completely and totally preventable. Yet now here we are, couple of days removed from it, and we are, of course, continuing to follow a completely preventable situation as a community now, as a family now, tries to deal with the fact that their 20-year-old daughter, U.S. Army Special Operations member Sarah Beckstorm, was killed. She immediately in the aftermath was rushed to the hospital. There were conflicting reports of what her and the other individual, U.S. Air Force Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf, he's 24 years old, what their status was. And then we would go on to learn the next day that, in fact, Sarah had lost her life. President Donald Trump announced that to the nation the next day. Here's the president's commentary. Incredibly sad.
I must unfortunately tell you that just seconds before I went on, right now, I heard that Sarah Beckstrom of West Virginia, one of the guardsmen that we're talking about, highly respected, young, magnificent person, started service in June of 2023, outstanding in every way. She's just passed away. She's no longer with us. She's looking down at us right now. Her parents are with her. It's just happened. She was savagely attacked. She's dead. She's not with us. Incredible person. Outstanding in every single way, in every department. That's horrible.
Yeah, horrible doesn't even begin to describe it. As this is Thanksgiving night, day after. We just heard from the president on Thanksgiving Eve. This is 6 o'clock or so Thanksgiving night with the president at Mar-a-Lago out down in Florida, once again holding a press avail, addressing, not a national address behind the Resolute desk or anything in the Oval Office, but updating the situation, announcing that 20-year-old U.S. Army specialist Sarah Beck-Storm had passed away, died due to her injury sustained in this assassination attempt that was then unfortunately successful. We would learn just a day later. Horrific, terrible, awful. You pick the adjective, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. A completely avoidable, preventable situation on something that just should not be the case. Yet, here we are. 20 years old. The other member of the West Virginia National Guard, just 24 years old, continues to fight for his life. Questions, and a lot of this is very speculative at this point. Questions remain about what a recovery would look like, because these were point-blank attacks. I mean, some of the details, which I'm not going to get into because they're incredibly gruesome, indicate that some of these bullets were fired within inches of these individuals, like almost holding the gun to their neck and their head and pulling the trigger. An execution-style assassination by a 29-year-old Afghani national that Joe Biden led into the United States without proper vetting. We have an immigration problem, and the American people know that we have an immigration problem as well. I've got some political polling from right before the presidential election that I want to go through quickly. I've got some additional commentary from President Donald Trump, who let it all out in a social media post in the aftermath of this, talking about the temporary pause, maybe permanent pause of some of these visas. We'll hear from Secretary Kristi Noem as well. A lot to get into on this busy December the 1st edition of the Nick Craig Show. We'll continue all of that coverage coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But before that, the show is only made possible thanks to Melissa Gott and her amazing team over at the Law Group here in Wilmington. And I want to let you know that when legal challenges arise, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, make sure you put your trust in the Law Group right here in Wilmington. Since 2003, the experienced attorneys at the Law Group have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across Eastern North Carolina. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating a real estate transaction, or maybe you're in a position where you need a strong defense, the Law Group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, they're not a big national law firm. They live in our community. They live right in our backyard, and they're located in downtown Wilmington. And just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. Give them a call for any legal questions or challenges you might be having, 910-251-6088, or online at lawgroupnc.com. The Law Group, experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate Melissa Gott and her team over at the Law Group for their continued support of the Nick Craig Show. We'll continue our coverage of this horrific situation unfolding in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday. One National Guard member, a 20-year-old, shot and killed by an Afghani national. Another National Guard member severely injured as well. We'll hear more from President Trump, Kristi Noem, and others, including Judge Jeanine Pirro, who will be the one prosecuting this case in Washington, D.C. As our coverage rolls on this busy Monday morning, The Nick Craig Show, streaming live on YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and 24/7, wherever you get your podcasts. And a good Monday morning to you. Welcome back to the Nick Craig Show. Hopefully you had a nice couple of days off, spending some time with family and friends over the Thanksgiving holiday as we continue our coverage this morning of a horrific situation unfolding the day before Thanksgiving in Washington, D.C., as two members of the West Virginia National Guard who were deployed in D.C. in an operation to crack down on crime in our nation's capital were brutally attacked and assaulted. One of those individuals, a 20-year-old by the name of Sarah Beckstorm, lost her life, was assassinated on the streets of Washington, D.C. Another member, a 24-year-old member of the National Guard, brutally injured. That's Andrew Wolf, remains in the hospital, and of course questions about recovery do continue. The president not holding back on this at all, taking the Truth Social Thanksgiving night, or very close to midnight or so, around 11 p.m., to put this very lengthy post out, which I want to read through this morning. He writes, "A very happy Thanksgiving salutation to all of our great American citizens and patriots who have been so nice in allowing our country to be divided, disrupted, carved up, murdered, beaten, mugged, and laughed at, along with certain other foolish countries who thought the world, throughout the world, for being politically correct and just plain stupid when it comes to immigration. The official United States foreign population stands at 53 million people, according to the census, most of which are on welfare from failed nations or from prisons, mental institutions, gangs, or drug cartels. They and their children are supported through massive payments from patriotic American citizens who, because of their beautiful hearts, do not want to openly complain or cause trouble in any way, shape, or form. They have put up with what has happened to our country, but it's eating them alive to do so. A migrant earning $30,000 a year with a green card will get roughly $50,000 in yearly benefits for their families. The real migrant population is much higher. This refugee burden is a leading cause of social dysfunction in America, something that did not exist after World War II. Failed schools, high crime, urban decay, overcrowded hospitals, housing shortages, and large deficits. As an example, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. Somalian gangs are roving the streets looking for prey as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments and houses, stay in their apartments or houses, hoping against hope that we'll be left alone. The seriously retarded governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, does nothing, either through fear, incompetence, or both, while the worst congressmen/women in our country, Ilhan Omar, always wrapped in her swaddling hijab, and who probably came into the United States illegally in that you are not allowed to marry your brother, does nothing but hatefully complain about our country, its constitution, and how badly she is treated, when her place of origin is backwards and a crime-ridden nation, which is essentially not even a country for lack of government, military, police, schools, etc. Even as we have progressed technologically, immigration policy has eroded those gains and living conditions for many. I will permanently pause migration from all third world countries to allow the U.S. system to fully recover. Terminate all of the millions of Biden illegal admissions, including those signed by Sleepy Joe's auto pen, and remove anyone who is not a net asset to the United States or is incapable of loving our country. And all federal benefits and subsidies to non-citizens of our country, denaturalize migrants who undermine domestic tranquility, and deport any foreign national who is a public charge, security risk, or non-compliant with Western civilization. These goals will be pursued with the aim of achieving a major reduction in illegal and disruptive populations, including those admitted through an unauthorized and illegal auto pen approval process. Only reverse migration can fully cure this situation. Other than that, happy Thanksgiving to all, except for those that hate, steal, murder, and destroy everything that America stands for. You won't be here for long. Wow. An absolutely excoriating social media post from President Donald Trump on Thanksgiving. And you can tell he's really, and rightfully so, really pissed off about this situation. He is not putting up with this anymore. No more Mr. Nice Guy from President Donald Trump. He is saying the quiet part out loud. And before we get to some of the additional comments from the president, I went back to the 2024 election in which the president had a sweeping victory. 7 of 7 swing states, won the popular vote, handedly won the Electoral College. It was just a bloodbath of an election for Kamala Harris and the Democrats. And I have mentioned to you many a times, and I will continue, that immigration was a large issue for voters in the 2024 election. But I like to back up my claims with evidence and data. I mean, I try to say things accurately and portray them in an accurate manner. Everybody's wrong from time to time. So this morning I started going back through some political polling in just the couple of days before the presidential election last year and pulled just a couple of polls out for you to look at. So we'll start with the North Carolina poll. This was in September, so just right before the presidential election. And this is the Carolina Journal poll, which they conduct months in and months out throughout elections. And this was the question for, again, this is late September of 2024, just right before the presidential election. Here's the question. When it comes to each of the following issues, which is the most important issue in the 2024 election? Inflation and prices at 29%, followed by immigration at 15.9%. So you've got immigration as a top issue in this poll. And this is a poll of North Carolinians, right? We're not a border state. We're not on the Canadian border. We're not on the Mexican border, kind of smack dab in the middle, right? Not in the middle of the U.S., but from a geographic standpoint, you split Canada and Canada and Mexico, kind of right in the middle. So it's not, we're not in South Texas. And almost 16% of voters said it was their top issue. That's a pretty big deal. That's a large issue. Obviously, the economy is always a large issue, but immigration is typically not this high on the list. It's just not. You can go back and look at polling from the 2020 election, 16, you go back to 2012. Immigration is never this high. It's always an issue, sure, but it's never at 16, 17%. And this was back in September of 2024. So that's one poll, a North Carolina poll. Now, here are some national polls that came out just days before the presidential election. This poll is the Wall Street Journal poll conducted October 19th through the 22nd. So again, this is like literally 2 weeks before the presidential election. And there was a question asked about immigration. This was the question was, what is the most important issue when you think about who you will vote for in the 2024 presidential election? And so you look at these numbers right here. Immigration had 23% in terms of its response. This was in October of 2024. In August 19, in July 19, February 20, this has been was an issue leading up almost a year before the 2024 presidential election. 23%, according to the Wall Street Journal poll, less than 2 weeks before the election last November of 24, said immigration was a problem. The economy was the highest issue in this poll, and that was only, and I say only, at 25%, just 2 percentage points higher than immigration. A major, major issue. This is not an outlier. Let's go and take a look at what was going on at NBC. This poll conducted just days before the presidential election. And lo and behold, what do we see? In this poll, in this question, securing the border and controlling immigration, according to the NBC News poll. Donald Trump, 57% of individuals said that he would do a better job controlling immigration and would do that than Joe Biden. 57%. How about Fox News? Regardless of how you might vote, who do you trust to do a better job at each of the following issues? Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? When you look at this poll, immigration, once again, 57% say that Trump would do a better job than Harris. That is in this poll from Fox News, which was released on October the 16th. 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks before the presidential election. Donald Trump had a 15% net advantage over Harris. 15%. And when you look at this poll, it is the largest of any of the issues. I mean, it's the largest of any of the issues by a large percentage. Trump with the advantage beats out everything in the poll. So I bring those, just a couple of those polls. I just pulled 3 of the most recent from Wall Street Journal, Fox News, NBC, try to get a wide gambit of the polling. And it's obvious that it was a major issue. And we've got a great comment coming in on our Rumble chat this morning from Leslie. She says, Trump has a way with words. He tells you what he really means with no sugarcoating and does it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And when I look at myself and I look at a lot of people that I talk to that are supporters of President Trump, that is one of the reasons that they are such strong supporters of his, because of posts like that. Now, I know the left sees that post and they just recoil. I mean, they can't handle it. But that's one of the main factors that continues to have me on the side of President Trump. He is willing to discuss hard issues without sugarcoating it, without the spin, without the politically correct BS that our society has become, where you're not allowed to say things. You're not allowed to be mean. You're not allowed to say and proclaim truth and fact. You're not allowed to do that because it could be offensive. You could trigger somebody. You could cause somebody to go into a fit of rage, a panic attack over your comments that weren't very nice. We're over that. We tried that for years. And look at what the end result is. Look at where it left us. It doesn't work. And so the president very clearly says what's on his mind. And I think when you look at the polling from 2024, you would find a lot of people are in fact in favor of that. That's why Trump had a 15-point advantage over Harris on the immigration issue in the Fox News poll. While Americans in the Wall Street Journal poll said that immigration was their second most important issue. And of course, if immigration was your second most important issue, you were voting for Trump because Biden and Harris botched the issue. Here's the president at Mar-a-Lago on Thanksgiving night talking to reporters once again, always accessible, always available, setting the standard for what accessibility should look like for a president, and was asked a question by the media, why do you blame the Biden administration for this? Take a listen.
Why do you blame the Biden administration?
Because they let him in. Are you stupid? Are you a stupid person? Because they came on a plane along with thousands of other people that shouldn't be here, and you're just asking questions because you're a stupid person. And there's a law passed that it's almost impossible not to get them out. You can't get them out once they come in. And they came in, and they were unvetted, they were unchecked, there were many of them, and they came in on big planes, and it was disgraceful. And if you look, you'll see there was a law passed. It makes it almost impossible not to let them in, not to certify them, so to speak, once they come in. And they came in, and they shouldn't have come in. And frankly, the whole thing was a mess. The whole Afghanistan situation was a mess. It should have never taken place. If we're going to go out, and we would have gone out because I had everybody ready to go. We were going to go out with strength and dignity and precision, and we would have left from Bagram, and we would have kept Bagram, by the way, because of its very close relationship to China and where they make their missiles. But when you let the people come in by the thousands and thousands and thousands, they made a terrible mistake. But they were incompetent, yeah.
They were incompetent. Hard to argue with that point. And of course, the media. Why do you blame the Biden administration? Because they let over 100,000 people from Afghanistan into the country and didn't vet them. They allowed tens of millions of illegals into the country through the U.S.-Mexico border over the span of 4 years, many of whom unchecked. Why do you blame the Biden administration? It's not just Trump blaming the Biden administration. I just showed you the data from 2024. The American people blamed the Biden administration. This is not some crazy radical right-wing idea, folks. This is not some truth only held by conservatives. It's blatantly obvious to everybody. Again, look at this polling data from Fox News. Who do you trust to do a better job with each of the following issues? 57% say they trust Trump. Only 42% trusted Harris. It's a 15-point difference. So it's not President Trump blaming the Biden administration. The freaking country did. And it's why one of the reasons why they rejected Kamala Harris and rejected the Democrat Party in 2024, plain and simple. But of course, the media. Well, why are you blaming Biden? He didn't do anything wrong. No, of course not. I mean, if you are a left-wing consumer of media, you would be of that mindset because throughout 40 years of the Biden administration, you never heard about anything that he did wrong. It was always about how everything was great. Inflation, transitory, not a real issue. Immigration, not a problem at all. Don't worry about any of these issues. Wars raging all over the globe. Not a problem. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. It's not a big issue. Just allow that to continue. Kristi Noem was on Meet the Press this weekend talking about this deportation that President Donald Trump talked about in his post. He called it reverse migration. She was on with Kristen Welker from NBC News. This is how this exchange unfolded.
Will you deport people with pending asylum claims, Madam Secretary?
We will if they should be. Absolutely. Yes, we are going to go through every single person that has a pending asylum claim, has an asylum claim here in this country. You know, one of the requirements of asylum is that you have to come in every single year for a checkup and an interview process and a revetting. And that is something that we're going to expedite and happen immediately with anyone who does have that asylum claim today and ensure that they deserve to still be in this country, that they still have the purposes for which they claimed that asylum in place and that they're not here being radicalized and perpetuating dangerous criminal activity against our Americans.
Wow, what a crazy concept. What a crazy idea. We're going to make sure that people who are in the United States, not citizens, but those claiming asylum, we're going to make sure that they have valid asylum claims and that they are being a useful, productive member of society. I know, folks. Wild, crazy idea. President was once again last night on Air Force One, making his way back to Washington, D.C., in front of the media again, spoke to the public and spoke to the media on Thanksgiving Eve, Thanksgiving Day, and once again last night aboard Air Force One. Here's the president, and again, more ridiculous questions from the media.
Mr. President, you said that you might denaturalize some American citizens. Can you talk about
people that are in here that shouldn't be here?
that became Americans? Are you trying
Well, we'll
to
see.
revoke
I
their
mean, yeah, if we
citizenship?
have criminals that came into our country and they were naturalized maybe through a Biden or somebody that didn't know what they were doing, if I have the power to do it, I'm not sure that I do, but if I do, I would denaturalize absolutely.
By the way, there's a couple of interesting things there in his comments. Did you hear what he said there at the end? It's quoted here in the tweet. If I have the power to do it, I would denaturalize absolutely. Thought Trump was a dictator. I'm not going to get too far off on a tangent here, but I thought this guy was an authoritarian dictator that was destroying the United States. Why is he saying if I have the power to do it? I mean, folks, we've been told now for the last 11 months that this guy is just ruling with an iron fist in Washington, D.C. He does whatever he wants. Everything he does is illegal. Why would he be saying if I have the power to do it? Doesn't fit the left's narrative at all of this guy, this authoritarian king that is ruling over our heads. He said, if I have the power to do it, which I don't think I do, but if I did, I would denaturalize absolutely. Huh. On a side note, that doesn't seem to fit the narrative of the emperor that exists in the White House and Donald Trump. But yeah, we'll leave that be for the time being. couple of other clips as we round out our coverage of this here this morning. Judge Jeanine Pirro, who is the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, she will be the one prosecuting the case against that 29-year-old Afghani national who shot and killed one member of the West Virginia National Guard, critically wounding another. She was on Fox News. I believe this is Thanksgiving morning, or the day. This is a Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, talking about this. The Pirro's literally going to be the one prosecuting this case. This is what she had to say.
Are we going to see an escalation in charges?
Oh, there's no question. First of all, our hearts go out and our thoughts and prayers go out to the family of a beautiful 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom, who answered the call to serve her nation. And she volunteered, and she ended up being shot ambush style on the cold streets of Washington, D.C. By an individual who will now be charged with murder in the first degree. There are certainly many more charges to come, but we are upgrading the initial charges of assault to murder in the first degree. And we are hoping that the more information we can get and the more investigation that is going on 24/7 now, around the clock in Washington, the more we will find out about what actually happened in terms of this individual even being in this country and being in a position to ambush and shoot down an innocent young woman who was doing her duty to the people of this country.
Yeah, and we will, of course, continue to learn and continue to follow and continue to track this information as we get it. It's sad. It's pathetic, and it's completely avoidable. Was completely avoidable. We have a nation. We do. That nation stands and lives on because of law and order, because of following processes for things like immigration. I know the left wants to claim and make the argument all the time that our immigration system is broken and, oh my God, it's this, that, and the other. They've done nothing to fix it. They don't want to do anything to fix it. They've been in power as recently as just a couple of years ago, 2020, 2021, 2022, controlling the White House, controlling Congress. If Democrats are so freaking concerned about immigration, they could have solved it at any point during that time, if they, in fact, were so concerned. But it's not. They're not. It's a talking point. They use it as cover for allowing lawlessness in the U.S. They use this talking point of the immigration system is really broken in America as their cover because they don't want to deal with the reality of the situation. So it's easy to just claim it's not anybody's individual fault. It's the system as a whole. It's the collective's fault. The U.S. as a collective. It's our fault that our immigration system is so broken. Are there things with our immigration system that need to change? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not an immigration expert. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that immigration is broken. I can tell you what is broken, though. Allowing unvetted individuals at the tune of 100,000 into the United States from a war-torn third world country, that's a problem. I can say emphatically, without a doubt, that is a problem. It's also a problem to allow tens of millions of people into the country under bogus, BS, nonsense asylum claims through the U.S.-Mexico border. It's also a problem to have potentially millions of gotaways into the U.S. because we just weren't keeping a close eye on what was going on outside of our points of entry on the southern border. All of those things are problems. President Donald Trump is not holding back. President Donald Trump is not sugarcoating. I mean, don't take my word for it. I mean, you can look at his Truth Social posts this weekend or over late last week. Blatantly obvious he's fed up with this. This is the Democrats' worst nightmare. It absolutely is. And he was asked this weekend, or I guess last night as he was making his way back to D.C., how long this pause was going to be, as he highlighted in a Truth Social post that he is doing a pause on immigration from all third world countries. And he said, I don't know. Could be indefinitely, could be a shorter time period. I'm not sure yet. This is the Democrats' worst nightmare. And it is unfortunately self-inflicted once again, because they didn't go through the process, of which I will note it was probably strenuous at the time. They didn't go through the process of vetting these individuals. They didn't think that it was relevant and important to follow immigration law. They didn't think it was relevant to hold people accountable. They didn't think it was relevant to make sure that people coming into the United States didn't want to harm and kill people, because none of that was relevant. None of that mattered to them whatsoever. We are in the situation that we are right now. Completely avoidable, completely preventable. Donald Trump is going to make sure that this doesn't happen again, or at least he's going to try his damnedest to make sure. He's not God. He doesn't have the ability to stop everything that happens. I'm not ignorant to the point where I believe that's the case. But if there is somebody that was going to try, if there was somebody that was going to make sure that stuff like this doesn't continue in the United States, I don't think there's a better person to do it than Trump. The Democrats have been losing their mind on it already. Seen the coverage over the last couple of days. They know what's coming, and it's not going to be fun for them at all. And the reality is, after watching what unfolded Wednesday afternoon in D.C., having watched what has unfolded over the last couple of years in America, college students being brutally murdered by Honduras gang members, Guatemalan gang members in the United States, the American people are fed up with it, folks. The public sentiment is not on the side of the Democrats. The public sentiment is behind President Trump. They are. They don't believe it's appropriate, and they don't like scrolling through Facebook, turning on the news, and reading about how a violent criminal from El Salvador has murdered a 22-year-old college student somewhere in the middle of the country. They don't appreciate that. They don't like that. There's no solace. They don't care if these people came from, hellhole countries. They don't care. They're fed up with it. They were fed up with it in 2024. The data backs that up. The result of the election backs that up, and nothing has changed. So strap in. It's going to be an interesting time to watch what happens with our immigration moving forward. And I will say that America emphatically has an immigration problem. And I'm very, very curious what President Trump, what Kristi Noem, and others are going to do to try and rectify and bring this situation in line. Got some comments in our chat this morning talking about what's going on in Minnesota. I've got a major story on that coming up, where you've got coming up tomorrow morning, where you've got a group of individuals in Minnesota, people that work for the Department of Health and Human Services in Minnesota. They absolutely torched the Minnesota governor in Tim Walz on social media, talking about the fraud that exists in Minnesota. That post that they put out has 32.6 million views. 32.6 million views, as Tim Walz allows the state of Minnesota, who, of course, you'll remember was Kamala Harris's wonderful VP pick, allows citizens, taxpayers in the state of Minnesota to be taken to the cleaners by illegal refugees, illegal migrants that are absolutely destroying the DHS system in the state of Minnesota. We'll get into those details coming up tomorrow right here on the Nick Craig Show. Well, that's going to do it for a Monday edition. Thanks to the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support. You can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com or give them a call for any legal challenges, 910-251-6088. Thanks for spending part of your Monday with us. So whether you join us live, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, or 24/7, wherever you get your podcasts, we're back here tomorrow morning for the Nick Craig Show.